Hello everyone, Skullblade here, and welcome to this video. Today I am covering a highly requested topic, how to play Magic the Gathering. It's a very long topic, as it's a pretty complicated game. I'm going over everything, and I mean everything. Basic rules to common concepts. Right here on screen we have timestamps for each part of the discussion. I would recommend that you first watch the whole video, but if at a later date you need a refresher, these timestamps will be here to help. So buckle up kids, we're going for a ride. To start on our Magic the Gathering adventure, we need cards. Many cards. You could buy these at Walmart, or Target, or on Amazon, but there are two much better alternatives. If you have one near you, check out your local game store. You might have to go onto Google, or Bing if you're a scrub, and search for one. These exclusively have board games, card games, dice, figurines, etc. If you play Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, or any other similar game, you should buy supplies for them here. And yes, they should also have Magic cards. Local game stores will generally offer a better price than a large retail store. And there's another bonus. If the store sells Magic cards, or I guess Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they will have tables and probably other people to play against. And every Friday, stores will have an event known as Friday Night Magic. I will explain this later once you know the rules, so stick around. However, if you don't have a local game store, there are online websites like TCG Player and Card Kingdom that will sell booster packs, supplies, and individual cards straight to your door for a great price. But enough of that. You want to learn how to play, not where. Your typical Magic deck will contain 60 cards. There are many ways to play Magic, but to keep it simple, you need 60 cards. At the beginning of the game, you will first choose who goes first, and you can do this with a coin flip, an arm wrestle, a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, or traditionally with a dice roll, and the one with the highest number gets to choose. Afterwards, each player will draw 7 cards to be their hand. If you like your hand, you will announce to your opponent that you will keep it. If not, announce that you would like to take a mulligan. Mulligan is a golf term, but it simply means to do over. In Magic, the way you mulligan changes every so often as optimizations are required. But as of March 2020, the month of this recording, when you mulligan, you shuffle your hand back into your deck and then draw 7 cards again. Repeat until your hand is to your liking. Then, you put a number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck equal to the amount of times you took a mulligan this game. Each player starts at 20 life and loses either when their life total drops to 0 or below, or when they have to draw a card from an empty deck. Now, as a side note, before I continue, please understand that while Magic has rules, the cards can change them at any time. Some cards even say you win the game on them, so always reference the cards when playing. There are 9 card types you need to know: land, creature, enchantment, artifact, instant, sorcery, planeswalker, legendary, and token. Lands are the fuel, the energy, the resources used to cast spells. To use their energy, which we call mana, we turn them sideways. This action is called tapping. By tapping a land, you are sucking up the mana from your environment and adding it to an invisible zone known as the mana pool. This contains all of the mana from the lands you have tapped during whatever part of the turn you're in, and at the end of each subpart or subphase, all of the mana that isn't used empties from the pool and can no longer be used. It vanishes from existence. Players may only play 1 land per turn. There are 5 phases of a turn, and those phases have subphases. It will take time, but you need to memorize all of them. If you need help, don't be afraid to ask your opponent. They won't bite. The first phase doesn't really have a name, but it contains 3 sub-phases: untap, upkeep, and draw. The untap step is where you take everything that is tapped or turned sideways on your side of the board and turn it right side up. This is also known as untapping it. Now, it can be reused. The next sub-phase, the upkeep, is largely ignored. Some cards reference it for abilities, and so you would stop here and let them happen. Last sub-phase is the draw step. You simply draw a card, then move on. The next phase is known as the pre-combat main phase. During this phase, you are allowed to play cards from your hand, and only during this phase. To ease us into the explanation, let's talk about card structure and types. This is an enchantment. When you play these, they go right onto the battlefield and generally have a passive effect. To play an enchantment, or any other kind of spell, you need to pay its cost. Nothing is truly free in Magic, and the most common payment is a mana cost. Remember when I talked about lands and how you can tap them for mana? This is where it matters. On this card, Kumena's Awakening, you can see the mana cost has 2 blue symbols with water droplets and a gray circle with a number. This is the mana cost. Lands only produce specific kinds of mana. Plains tap for white mana, islands tap for blue mana, swamps tap for black mana, mountains tap for red mana, and forests tap for green mana. So, if you tap 2 islands, that pays the colored part of Kumena's Awakening's cost. However, those numbers are also part of the cost. The number represents an additional cost that can be spent with the specified amount of any kind of mana. You could use 4 blue, you could use 2 blue and 2 black, you could use 2 blue or red and white. Once the cost is paid, the card enters a zone known as the stack, which will be discussed later. Then it hits the table, and you follow what the text box says. The other parts of the card include the name, the mana cost, the artwork, the card type, the creature type if it's a creature, the set symbol, the text box, the flavor text, the collector's information, and the border. If it's of a high rarity, newer cards will also have a foil stamp near the bottom. To truly know a card's rarity, you must look at the set symbol. A common card has a white with black bordered or a black with white bordered symbol. An uncommon has a silver symbol, a rare has a gold symbol, and a mythic rares is bronze. There are 9 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare or mythic rare in a booster pack, as well as a land and a token. Next up are artifacts. They are generally colorless or lacking any color in their mana cost. They act similarly to enchantments, as they are generally passive, but they are also known to have activated abilities on them, which are like spells but reusable. These, like enchantments, are permanents. All permanents stay onto the battlefield when played until they are removed, generally due to a spell or ability. Creatures are the 4th card type, and these are more complicated than the last 3. You will notice that they are slightly different from other cards because they have a small rectangle in the lower right corner with 2 numbers and a slash in between. This is known as a creature's power and toughness. The number more to the left is the power of the creature. This is how much damage it can deal to a player, creature, etc. The right number is the toughness. This is how much damage it can take in a turn before it dies. Lastly, unless a creature says otherwise, they cannot attack the turn they are played due to a concept called summoning sickness. Imagine yourself as an interdimensional wizard person that just pulled a mother bear out of a wormhole or summoning portal and are now trying to fight your opponent with it. Well, the bear is disoriented from the trip and will take until your next turn to get ready. Creatures with summoning sickness can't tap unless another card forces it to. Their other abilities can still be used. This takes us right into the combat step, the phase after the pre-combat main phase. The combat step is where you get to attack players and planeswalkers. More on those later. But do not ever try to attack a creature. You can't do that. That's a stupid idea, and you should be ashamed of yourselves for trying to incite creature cruelty. If you don't like the idea of not attacking creatures, then you should either play the color green or go back to Hearthstone. All jokes aside, during this phase you are allowed to choose any of your creatures to attack. All creatures attacking must be tapped and declared as attackers toward either the opponent and or any planeswalkers you don't control. Then your opponent has the chance to respond by blocking with their own creatures. They can block an attacking creature with any number of creatures that aren't already blocking. An attacking creature that is blocked will deal damage equal to its power to the blocking creature, and vice versa. One may die, both may die, or maybe they both bounce off each other and survive to fight another day. All unblocked creatures will deal damage to the player or planeswalker they are attacking equal to their power. Then all survivors go back to their controller side of the board. The phase ends. Wondering why I didn't mention any subphases? Everything I just mentioned has a subphase. Go to combat, declare attackers, declare blockers, damage, go to next phase. In that order. Side note, all creatures deal damage at the same time to prevent shenanigans. For example, let's say you attack your opponent with a 2/2 bear. The opponent blocks it with 3 of their 4 1/1 squirrels. The bear will split its damage among the squirrels however the controller of the bear likes. They could be stupid and deal all 2 damage to one squirrel and let the other 2 live as they deal 3 damage in total to your bear. Or you could divide the damage amongst 2 squirrels. You cannot deal 0 damage to the squirrels and deal 2 damage to the player or planeswalker that is being attacked. You deal with the creatures first. The last squirrel is the only survivor, so it returns to the opponent's side of the field, while all casualties go to the graveyard. The graveyard is a place where all destroyed, killed, and discarded cards go to rot. Sometimes you can move cards out of the graveyard when a card says so, but generally something that goes to the graveyard stays in the graveyard. But this isn't always enough for some people. To really hit home that something is gone forever, there is a second zone known as Exile. This zone is a special place where everything that goes here will never, ever come back. While on this topic, in the middle of 2 other topics, let's discuss the zones on the battlefield. The battlefield is the entire table that you and your opponent are using to play the wizard cards. On this battlefield, each player should have a graveyard, a library, which is fancy speak for your deck, an exile, their hand, the command zone if you're special, and the other special place. This is the one where everything else goes. Set up your battlefield however you want, but I will tell you now that lands go behind the creatures, and if you do it backwards, you deserve to descend to the deepest reaches of hell. Good? Good. And to lastly understand combat, here are some planeswalkers. They are somewhere in between a creature and an enchantment. They can be attacked like players, and if that number in the lower right corner reaches 0, the planeswalker dies. They can have anywhere from 2 to 4 normal abilities and 1 to 2 passive ones. Normal abilities either add, subtract, or ignore the planeswalker's loyalty. Like money, you can't spend loyalty that you don't have, and you can only use 1 ability per turn. Whenever a planeswalker is dealt combat damage or regular damage, that many loyalty counters are removed from them. Also, you can only have 1 planeswalker out with the same name at a time. Why? All planeswalkers, and some specific other cards, also have the type Legendary. Legendary means 2 things. 1, this card is far more powerful than any other card at that rarity and even beyond. And 2, you may only have 1 legendary with the same name out on the battlefield under your control at a time. For example, If you have 2 Kalia of the Vasts on the battlefield under your control, you must sacrifice one, and it goes to the graveyard. Same goes if you somehow have 3, 57, or 129. You can only have 1. But let's say you have Kalia of the Vast and Kalia Zenith Seeker on the battlefield under your control. It's the same character, but in different card forms. Neither are sacrificed due to the laws of magic, and the space-time continuum is still somehow okay. Since mid-2018, all legendary creatures printed since then have a cool new bordering on top of their name and mana cost to help distinguish it from other cards. And those squirrels I showed you? Those are tokens. Tokens are permanents that act like the permanent they say they are, but are not real cards. If they change zones, they are immediately removed from existence. Why? Because they can. All other game rules apply to them. After the combat phase, there is the post-combat main phase. It is identical to the previous main phase. That's it. But there's still more card types. The next one is called a sorcery. These are played like permanents, but instead of hitting the table, they do their effect, then go straight to the graveyard. And the last phase is the end step. This has a few parts which are largely unnamed. First, like the upkeep, all effects that would trigger at the end step happen now. Then, if you have more than 7 cards in your hand, you discard cards until you have 7 in your hand. Lastly, all damaged creatures heal, and the next turn begins for your opponent. Repeat until someone falls over and dies. And that's basic Magic. Except not! There is still one card type I didn't talk about that is about to make everything I just said even more confusing. Ready? Instants are like sorceries, where they do a thing and then they disappear. However, what changes is when you can play them. People describe them as being able to be played whenever you want, but that's a lie. You can play instants when you have priority. What's that? If it's your turn, for example, you can play a creature, and let's say that you do. Well, the opponent now has what is called priority. Normally, the player whose turn it is has priority until they either cast a spell, activate an ability, or before they move to the next phase or sub-phase. Then, the opponent gets a chance to respond, because they have priority. During this time, they could cast an instant. Let's say that they do. Now, you have priority. You keep going until both players don't do anything while they have priority. Then, you resolve the stack. When you cast a spell, it goes on the stack. If the opponent has no response, it resolves and gets to either do its thing and go to the graveyard or go to the battlefield. When the stack resolves, the top card or the card played last happens first. Then the card after that, then the card after that, and you keep going until the stack is empty. Then priority goes back to the person whose turn it is. And repeat. And now we're done. You could stop the video here, buy a Magic the Gathering deck, and play Magic, right? Technically, yes, but you also wanted the full explanation, and there is still more to learn. Then relearn. Yes, I can taste the watch time flooding in right now. So, now that you know the basics, we are now going to go even further. Ready? On some cards you will find that they possess some mechanics. Yes, some cards have flavor text and nothing else, but the majority have abilities to memorize. This is why Magic takes 3 months to get okay at the game and a few years to master. Anyway, these mechanics are known as evergreen and will show up in every set. What's a set? Every 3 months, Wizards of the Coast, the people who make Magic, release 200 to 300 new or reprinted cards that you can find in booster packs. Some cards are cool, some are garbage, and some are Oko. Don't play Oko. In alphabetical order, the first mechanic is Activate. Simple, but it's just the use of an ability on the card that requires player input to begin. Attach is a mechanic where you connect one card to another. Generally, attaching one card to another will give one or both effects that wouldn't have been achieved separately, and you can only attach one card to another when a card says you can. Counter is a difficult mechanic to explain because it has two meanings in Magic. The first is a mechanic generally on instants that remove a card from the stack and place it directly into the graveyard. The other meaning is of a marker you put on creatures or other permanents to permanently add power and toughness, like +1/+1 counters, or to mark something for an ability. Counters like these are removed from a card when it changes zones unless told otherwise. For example, if a 2/2 had 3 +1/+1 counters on it, it would then be a 5/5. Create refers to making tokens. So if a card says create 13 tapped 2/2 black zombies, then you make 13 2/2 black zombies that enter the battlefield tapped. Death Touch is an ability that generally only creatures have. It means that any amount of damage dealt to a creature is instantly enough to destroy it. Defender is an ability where all creatures that have it cannot attack. It can still block, tap, and activate abilities. Destroy means to put something from the battlefield into the graveyard. Discard means to put something from a player's hand into the graveyard. Double Strike and First Strike must be explained together. Normally, when an attacking creature is blocked by another creature, when you move to damage step, both will deal damage equal to their power to each other. But if a creature has First Strike or Double Strike, they create a subphase in between declared blocker step and damage step called First Strike damage step. All creatures with First Strike and Double Strike deal damage during this step to the other creature. No other creatures are allowed to deal damage. Then normal damage happens, so all creatures deal damage to each other except for creatures with First Strike. Notice I didn't also specify Double Strike. Creatures with this deal First Strike damage and normal strike damage, hence the double in Double Strike. Enchant is a keyword on all enchantment aura cards. These are enchantments that enter the battlefield and attach to whatever the card says to. A card could say enchant land, enchant creature, enchant permanent, or even enchant legendary goat. You never know, it could happen. If an enchanted card stops being the card type that the attached aura was exclusively allowed to attach to, the aura goes to the graveyard. If the aura becomes unattached to the permanent or player it was attached to, and it is not told to enchant something else, it goes to the graveyard. Equip is a keyword on all artifact equipment cards. These are artifacts that you have to pay a cost to cast, and then pay a cost to attach to a creature. Like auras, if the equipped creature stops being a creature, it becomes unattached. Unlike auras, if these become unattached, they stay on the battlefield. Also, the equip cost can be paid and the equipment can be moved to another creature even if it's already attached to another creature. Exile refers to the zone and the action of moving something there. Earlier, I made some references to the keyword fight. This is the only way one creature can attack another creature. When a creature fights another creature, they deal damage to each other equal to their power. Unlike normal combat, First Strike and Double Strike doesn't matter, but Death Touch still does. You can fight a tapped creature, you can fight an untapped creature, you can fight an attacking or blocking creature, you can fight a creature that has flying with a creature you control that doesn't, and so on. Flash is another keyword ability, one that allows all cards with it to be able to be cast whenever you have priority instead of just during your main phases. Flying and reach must be explained together. Creatures with flying can only be blocked by creatures with flying or creatures with reach. Flying creatures and reach creatures can still block any creatures. Haste is a keyword ability that allows the creature that has it to be able to tap or attack as if it didn't have summoning sickness. Hexproof is yet another keyword mechanic that prevents an opponent from targeting the permanent with hexproof with a spell or ability. For example, if you had a 1-1 with hexproof and a 2-2 without hexproof, your opponent could cast Lightning Bolt targeting the 2-2 but not the 1-1 with hexproof. Same goes for abilities. If you play a hostage taker while you have no other creatures on the battlefield, and the opponent's only creature is a 1-1 with hexproof, the ability has no valid targets and fizzles, or ceases to be. If your creature without hexproof is targeted by an opponent's spell and you give it hexproof, then the spell fizzles and goes to the graveyard. Indestructible, like hexproof, is an extremely annoying and powerful ability that is also just as confusing. A permanent with indestructible cannot be destroyed, but it can be exiled. For example, if your opponent has a Hazoret the Fervent and you cast a Lightning Bolt and a Shock to try and kill it, you can't because it has indestructible. If you try and cast Murder to kill it, you still can't because it has indestructible. But if you cast 2 Deadweights to try and kill it, it works. Why? If a creature with indestructible's toughness is reduced to 0 in this fashion, then it dies. Also, creatures with indestructible can still be sacrificed. No one knows why, that's just how it is. Lifelink is an ability mostly found on creatures that makes it so any damage that creature deals gains you that much life. And on that note, your life total has no limit. You can have infinite life if you are able. Menace is a fairly recent ability that prevents a creature from being blocked unless that creature is blocked with 2 or more creatures. Protection is the bane of my existence. It exists because somehow hexproof wasn't strong enough. Protection from something means that the thing with it cannot be blocked, dealt damage, targeted, enchanted, or equipped by anything that meets that criteria. Reveal simply means that all players in the game get to see it for a reasonable duration of time. Like, I don't know, enough time to read what it does. Sacrifice means that you put a specified permanent you control into the graveyard. It dies, but it can't be destroyed. It is sacrificed. Hexproof, protection, and indestructible can't stop it. Scrying a specific number, like Scry 1, means that you look at the top specified number of cards of your library, rearrange them in any order, and or put any number of them on the bottom of the deck, and then stop looking at them. While casual matches may allow it, it is generally considered fairly rude to look at a card while scrying, put it back, and then later look at it again, even if you should know what it is to begin with. Just to clarify, what I was talking about was, so let's say I tap this island and I cast Opt. So, scry 1, draw a card. For the purposes of this demonstration, let's just say it says scry 1, like just scry 1, that's it. Right? So I look at the top card of my deck and, ooh, it's an Adela's. Alright, let's say I will keep it on top. So, put it back on the deck. Opt goes to graveyard, and then yeah, ta-da, you keep going with your life. That's kind of how it should go. But let's say it's the opponent's turn now, and you're like, I need to look at the card again. That's a no. Don't. You don't do that. Now, go back to our scenario. Let's say, play an Opt. Scry, it's Adela's. And you're like, put it back on top, which if you do it like this, it kind of like can signify that, hey, I'm making a decision still. Like, should I have my favorite legendary wizard person on top of my deck? And then you can look at it and stuff, but once you put it back on top and like you clarify, yep, I've made my decision, this is the card on top, or I'm putting it on the bottom of my deck. But let's say you keep it on top. You should not just pick it up and look at it again. You're not allowed to pick it up until you draw. That's basically what I'm suggesting. In casual matches, some people try and weasel their way into doing this. It's suspicious, it looks like they're cheating, and I don't support it. You might see this, but know that it's not okay, and you really should tell your opponent that they shouldn't do that. They should spend the time to make their decision when they play the spell, right? Search refers to looking through your deck privately and selectively choosing a specified card. Generally, this is followed with putting that card into your hand, then shuffling, or shuffling and then putting that card on top of your deck. Trample is our second to last mechanic, which is exclusively on creatures. It means that after assigning damage to blocking creatures, if there is any left over, it is dealt to the player or planeswalker the creature with trample was attacking. For example, if a 7/6 with trample was blocked by 6 1/1 squirrel tokens, you could deal 7 damage to one squirrel, or 3 to one squirrel and 4 to 4 others, or deal 1 damage to each squirrel and deal the remaining 1 point of damage to the thing that is being attacked. Like I said earlier, you can't deal 0 damage to any of the squirrels and exclusively damage the player or planeswalker. The creatures must be dealt with first. Our last ability is known as Vigilance. It means that the creature with it doesn't tap when attacking. This means it can attack during your turn and block during your opponent's. And yes, finally, now you know everything you need to play. Everything. I won't go into formats, or banning, restricting, or unbanning cards. And won't go into how booster packs are gambling legal for children, or how the secondary market has insider trading. If you want to learn about that, check out Desolator Magic or the Magic Historian. So yes, if you want to start playing Magic the Gathering right now, then go to your local game store and buy a deck. They might tell you about Friday Night Magic, which is a casual tournament every Friday, except for when Redacted Virus comes to commit
fetus deleted.
And if you want to learn how to build a deck, then you had better check out my video on that. Link probably not in the description. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped. You can help me out by liking the video, subscribing to my channel, and sharing this video with others. I will see you next video. Skullblade out.